Everyone, welcome to another Overrated Film Saturday, and today I thought it would be interesting to discuss a disaster film, in particular the disaster film that I think kind of started the ball rolling for more disaster survival oriented films, and that was The Day After Tomorrow. So before I get started with discussing this film and why I think a lot of what it has to offer is way overhyped, um, let me briefly address what's going on with my computer so that nobody is confused anymore. I currently have a new computer, so this camera is the one that I will be using from now on. So hopefully there's no more issues with that, and I'm really impressed actually with the lighting so far and how it looks a whole lot better than my previous webcam. So that's something that's, I think, good to note, because I know that I haven't been able to upload yesterday because of some issues that I have been with my brother's computer. So now that's completely resolved. So now I can just do everything on my own through using my own computer and my own technology. But basically, what I wanted to start sort of explaining in regards to The Day After Tomorrow is that not only does it have a director that has been tied to doing these kinds of really action-packed movies, but he's also been very focused and honed in on this idea of trying to really approach the survival end of filmmaking, and at the same time sometimes combine that with a creature feature, which was really what his earlier works sort of did. And the director I'm talking about is basically, his name is Roland Emmerich, or Roland Emmerich, excuse me, not Roland Emmerich, just Roland Emmerich, and basically, or Roland Emmerich, I think that's the correct pronunciation, but he was the one who made the 1998 Godzilla, as well as such disasters as Independence Day, although I will say Independence Day actually had some value, because even though it is a very overly saturated and cheesy film, at least it kind of was able to pull that off, because you did have sort of a creature feature disaster kind of approach, similar with Godzilla, because at the same time, even though Godzilla is and can be a real threat in some of the interpretations, Roland Emmerich takes the concepts and makes them to the point where they're not supposed to be really taken seriously almost. And I think that works more to his advantage slightly when it comes to the creature features that are based more within the idea of a creature or creatures trying to destroy the planet. Like that kind of works because, again, you're creating a very unrealistic environment and you can play around with a lot of concepts and ideas. But when you're trying to talk about an issue such as global warming, that's, I think, a very big kind of back and forth debate. You kind of have to take your audience seriously in order to do this. And unfortunately, I think The Day After Tomorrow really didn't do that. But it still made it a lot of money. It cost a fortune to make, but it did make a lot of money. And as a result, I see it constantly being played on, the channels on television, and I just, have just felt like this film, again, despite the criticisms of it, I feel like that there's still a lot of people who do really enjoy this film. unlike something like Godzilla, which people consider to be probably the worst of the adaptations of Godzilla. So I felt like I couldn't really put Godzilla in the overrated category because although it did make a lot of money, it didn't win over people, I don't think, all that well. But I think this film was actually one of them that did. And I think for several reasons. I think during the time when this film was made, I think this is when we started getting the concepts of global warming approaching. And so the whole idea of going into a global warming film seemed rather appealing for, I think, a lot of people, because I think a lot of people were looking for that idea of what could possibly happen. And again, this kind of leads to 2012. They came out um, before 2012 even happened, and we all know what ended up happening. Nothing ended up happening. Um, so it's it's to the point where he was really trying to put in a lot of serious issues within his films. In particular, the 2012 issue was a big craze, as well as global warming. And I think when you try to take in those serious issues and then not take your audience seriously, I don't think it really pays off for you as a filmmaker. And the interesting thing too is how it kind of addresses the global warming issue within the film, because it sort of explains, yeah, it's real, and yeah, it's going to kill everybody. Um, and it's going to be completely crazy, and yeah, there's all these storms, and all of these storms are getting worse, and it's all because of, this phenomenon that we didn't take care of the planet, and now the planet is going to, completely destroy itself because of what we did to it. And, you get a Dick Cheney kind of look-alike to play your vice president. And, you kind of, it's just kind of just, I think rubs the audience the wrong way. But I think it was really reacting to what people were feeling towards the time. And I think a lot of people do have that side of the issue to where they believe the in the in the scientific evidence that suggests that global warming is happening. But again, this is a whole huge debate, and I don't want to go into the whole debate about global warming. But again, if you're gonna take a serious topic like this, it's best to give it as much dimension as you possibly can. And here, I don't think that the science or the logic or the messaging behind this film really came through. Because I think, again, a lot of it has to do with the spectacle. Roland Emmerich, excuse me, is known for this. He puts a lot of a lot of emphasis on the visuals, similar to Michael Bay, but not with so much explosions, just more of certain events happening, um, like, for example, um, the 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 huge gigantic storm with all of the water, just rising up and taking over New York City, the climate just like reaching that icing point, and it kind of um, takes it to that spectacle level. And when you're trying to do that with a film, especially when you're trying to address such an issue as global warming and as climate change, then it's really hard for it to be taken as something serious and something worth noting when you make so much emphasis on these visuals and not so much on the story and the characters. And um, I think that's where we get a huge spectacle aspect from the film, and as a result, we don't really get a strong story and we don't get really strong characters. A lot of the characters that end up dying in the film are characters we don't even know. Like, they're just random people getting killed. And I understand that there should be an emphasis that this is a very big issue. And again, it is trying to be one of these big films. But I almost feel too that you need to do well with the characters that you have and that you're trying to set up with so that the audience can get invested into how the characters try to ultimately stop the storm or um, get people to safety. Uh, and to me, it's just very it's very oversaturated with this kind of um, violence and how it treats humanity as like, yeah, all these people just died in one big sloop from this storm, and it feels kind of just cold. I mean, at least to me, and it's it just lacks that ability to I think get really the audience invested in wanting to fight this storm, except for you wanting to root maybe for some of the main characters. But again, really, there's not a whole lot to the main characters in this film. So again, I think the simple point can be made that there was too much visuals and too much eye candy and not enough in the character department, in the story department, in the logic behind such an event taking place department. And this is where we get this kind of a film. And again, trying to make it so that that there's these politicians out there who don't want to do anything, and who don't think that it's real, and blah blah blah, and just trying to take the whole idea and just make it, I think, more completely one-sided. I mean, yes, I understand that there's a lot of evidence probably for global warming out there, but I think that there's a lot of complicated issues surrounding it, and with science, there's always going to be you're never going to reach the full truth. You can only know as much as you can as a theory as to what could possibly happen within the future. So again, I just feel like, this whole idea of, oh, bad humans, ooh, look at the horrible humans who destroyed the planet. That's a theme we've heard and seen time and time again. And, oh, look at the consequences. And yeah, okay, yeah, we've seen this before. This is nothing new. All you're doing is just slapping on global warming on there and calling it revolutionary. And to be honest, I don't think this film holds a candle to be anything revolutionary. So I think there is just this element within the film that makes it hard for me to take it seriously, just because of the fact that the visuals are really heavily emphasized, and the way people die is just like all so, ooh, so unexpected, and ooh, so tragic. But at the same time, we don't know anything about these people, and yeah, it's just it just kind of treats humanity like like, okay, we'll kill 100 people in this one scene. Yeah, okay, we don't need to know any of them. We just need to emphasize, ooh, it's scary, it's dark times here, folks. But yeah, just the oversaturation of a visual, I think, really dampers the film into us getting invested into the survival aspect, which is really what the film is trying to be, a survival film. But it I think just overblows itself with these themes, and tries to play with the audience, and look at how horrible we are, and I'm just like, no, we're not horrible, we're not. We're not horrible. We just got a lot to work on. That's all. Um, and that's where I think the huge problem lies, and as to why I think it's ultimately overrated. Like, I think people got really invested in the visuals, similar to Avatar. It's all the visual eye candy. It's all of those crazy explosions, those crazy feats of nature, that are completely unlike anything that actually exists. The lack of science, that's of something that could plausibly happen, you know, that whole, all those things I think really tie into how I think overblown this film is. It's just there's just no point. You know what's gonna happen. You know what the ending's gonna be. Well, not necessarily how exactly, but you know where it's pretty much going. The you know the main characters for the most part are gonna make it out okay. You know you know the whole message is gonna be, you know, oh, I'm sorry, you know, we messed up, we're bad humans, let's fix this, the end. And to me it's just very pretentious. It doesn't come off as something revolutionary, especially when you're trying to make a film that's really about such a hot button issue as global warming. You need to put in some depth into it. You can't just put a simple label onto it and do what other films did, but then put in maybe a different concept, like, oh, we're over polluting, or, you know, things like that. Oh, we're destroying the ocean, you know, or something like that. You know, there has been countless things that have gone over this theme of, you know, humans being the burden to the planet. You know, we've just seen it over and over again, and I've seen it done the same way, and to me it's just nothing new. So I think that part really bothers me. But I do understand why people enjoy the spectacle. I mean, I understand it in the same way that people like Michael Bay films. They'll go in for how cool and pretty the visuals are, and I will admit the visuals in this film are really well done. But visuals don't, I think, make a film. I think what makes a film is your characters, your story, your plot, the way the way the acting is. Just there's just tons of things that go into a film, and I think a lot of the things that they focused on, which I think were visual. I think that's why the film costed so much, was to make these visuals look stunning, which they do look stunning, even to this day. But to say that it is anything more than that is just, to me, to me that's just not true in my opinion. I feel like that a lot of what it has to offer is just stuff that we've seen before, and I really just can't get invested into it. I really can't find myself enjoying it. Um, and I think that's why it gets, I put this film in the overrated category, because it just, and the problem that I have with this film is not only because it's overrated for these visual aspects and for this whole spectacle of global warming, I think it is also the first one to really start Roland um, Emmerich's career on a higher note, and as a result, we get films like 2012, which I will admit 2012 is worse, I think, than The Day After Tomorrow, because at least The Day After Tomorrow had visuals, but didn't really, you know, make them so overly crazy and insane. Like, they made it a little bit more down to earth and plausible, but again, that's not saying much. But at the same time, 2012 just takes it to that whole other level. And the reason people will go see it is for the freaking visuals, for just all of this stuff being thrown at them on the screen, and nothing based on story, nothing based on characters, and all because of what? The spectacle of 2012. And it's kind of the same a little bit with 10,000 BC, which is another film that he did after this one. Although, again, it's not a survival. I mean, it's technically a rescue kind of story, but again, I guess you could call it survival too. That did really horribly too, as far as in the critique department. And I honestly don't know why people saw really 10,000 BC, but I could make the argument it not maybe partially for visual candy, but probably also because we haven't really seen films that have revolved around what happened to the cavemen. Like it would be cool to know more about cavemen. And I would really like to see a good film that's about cavemen, but we've never gotten one. We got freaking 10,000 BC. So, and I think it's just this overemphasis on trying to create this spectacle of, ooh, look at how pretty visuals are, and ooh, look at all of these crazy landscapes we can get in, and ooh, look at just, it's all about just looking and not about thinking, or it's and that's really what bothers me about a lot of the Roland Emmerich films, is just that they really try to push the visual envelope, and it's the same thing with Michael Bay, except it's not action, it's survival type filmmaking. It's about, ooh, how is the characters going to get out of this one, and the way the characters try to get out of the situations in 2012 are they're just appalling, because especially when they make already so many people like die and we don't even know who they are, and oh, it's just, oh, it just bothers me so much, these kinds of films. And I think large part is just because they do revolve around trying to create this visual appeal, this visual environment, and not focus on what really should matter, and in these kinds of stories. And if you want to make a survival story, you got to make sure we got characters that we can invest in and that we're interested in. Jake Gyllenhaal's character in this movie is really forgettable. Like, I've seen this character before. I've seen the Yemi Rasoon character time and time again. I've seen I believe it's Dennis Quaid. I've seen the Dennis Quaid character time and time again. There's no difference with these characters. They're two-dimensional. That's it. That's all that they get. And I think it just lacks the intelligence, I think, in approaching this kind of content and this kind of subject matter of global warming. And you could argue whether Al Gore approached it appropriately or not, but I mean, as far as this film goes, from a fictional standpoint, it's just ridiculous. At least in my opinion, I don't think it's completely horrible, or as bad as maybe some other films that I've looked into. But I will say it is one of those films that I just think gets way, way too overhyped for what it is. And I think it's just way, way, way overblown for the kind of material that it's offering. And I think it really got on this hype of global warming. And I think since global warming still remains a freaking issue, this is why this movie will probably stay popular, because it's the only film that really focuses on it, except Al Gore's movie. But again, maybe some people don't really like documentaries. Oh, let's see actually a movie, and see, that's where I think it just bothers me. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say when it comes to this kind of film. I think it really started a role for Roland Emmerich to make even more horrible movies. And again, even though I know Godzilla did come out a little bit before, and yes, that film was really bad, I think it still gets recognized today as being horrible. Whereas I think The Day After Tomorrow just gets looked at as oh yeah, it was alright, yeah, instead of not looked at as, a downward spiral for Roland Emmerich's quality of filmmaking, but at the same time still making tons of money off of these kinds of films. And oh, these movies they're just not that good. At least The Day After Tomorrow I don't think is that good, and I think it was really the film that really started it, and I think it really was the film that overhyped this idea of, yeah, let's make a disaster movie where we'll have tons of people dying and it's horrible and it's supposed to be a tragedy, but we kind of oversaturated with CGI and whatever not, and just ugh. And we don't create a story from it, you know. It's I think that's really the reason why I think this one in particular is overrated, because it started kind of the overrated um, the overrated films that Roland ended up producing afterwards, which include 2012 and 10,000 BC. And even though 10,000 BC is not like a complete disaster film, it's still focused on trying to be survival oriented and trying to go for that survival instinct of the time period. And it just doesn't pull it off because it doesn't have a good story, and it doesn't have good characters. And that's why it fails. And I think The Day After Tomorrow fails in the same respects. But I don't think it's a horrible film, but at the same time, I think it's way overhyped for what it is, and made too much money. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year. And somebody will be making the next video today, later on this evening. So stay tuned for that. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.